Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for the final 2020 USDA FOG Abatement Training brought to you by the Western States Alliance, a program of the Pacific Northwest Pollution Prevention Resource Center. Make sure you guys are muted. This webinar is number 2 of Module 2, Implementation of a FOG Program. My name's Krista, I'm the Communications Manager, and I'm going to be your moderator. So brief background, you guys have heard this already. We're a nonprofit founded in 1991 to provide pollution prevention information. We want to remind you guys that we do provide a rapid response service where we can answer any questions you have in the pollution prevention realm, including fats, oils, and grease. We provide about 48 hours of research to any question you have, and it's free of charge, and we highly encourage you guys to check out our website to learn more about it. So again, the program that's hosting today's webinar, Western States Alliance, we call them WSA, is a membership organization of FOG professionals, primarily from the Pacific Northwest, though we'd like to remind everyone that we are recruiting all across the country for our next 2021 USDA fiscal grant. It is national in scope, and we're really hoping to learn information from literally everywhere. You know, you guys can actually kind of see yourselves as trailblazers because all of this information is relatively new for the USDA. So please, if you'd like to get involved, let me know and I'll get you signed up. And just a reminder that we are planning on holding that FOG forum in the spring. It'll likely be virtual. So as mentioned earlier, this webinar today is funded by a grant through the USDA's Rural Utility Services. The speakers are Clayton Brown, Ed Gilmore, Ken Grimm. Final housekeeping notes. I sent everyone CEUs from Monday, and today's, sorry, you guys call core hours, I'll be sending out probably Thursday or Friday. Definitely not today. I'm super swamped, so hopefully you can see something by Friday at the latest. And then the final housekeeping note, please, please, please use that question box. We really do appreciate your questions. We want you guys to treat this like a classroom. There is no stupid question. Trust me, I ask plenty of stupid questions. We really appreciate those questions. It really helps us know how you guys are doing in your state, and it helps keep us on our toes. And finally, please take that needs assessment survey if you haven't done so already. It does, all of that data goes to the USDA and it really helps us out. And please take the survey that pops up at the end of the webinar. All right, we're ready to go. So you can take it away, Clayton.
Thanks, Krista. My name is Clayton Brown. I'm one of the presenters and kind of along with Ed Gilmore, we're kind of founding members of the Western States Alliance. Which is fun. I spent before college, well, during college, actually, I worked for 10 years in utility construction. So building roads and streets, putting in sewer and water lines, power, underground power, conduits, all that fun stuff. Getting dirty, working in the mud, working in the rain. I finally decided maybe I should get a different job. So I went to work for the Clean Water Services, which is a sanitary and surface water management utility in Washington County, Oregon. And I spent 30 years there. And I was the manager of the source control division, the industrial pretreatment program, FOG abatement, pollution prevention, and the industrial stormwater programs. So I was the guy that started the FOG abatement program in Washington County for the sewer district. And a lot of the stuff we go over today and that we've gone over in the past are a learning curve for me, a result of making mistakes that I hope with the information we get to you, you won't make the same mistakes I made. Currently, I'm the program manager here for PPRC at Western States Alliance. For education, I have a bachelor's in biology from Portland State University and a master's in business administration from George Fox University. So with that, Krista mentioned that this training is brought to you courtesy of a U.S. Department of Agriculture Technical Assistance Grant. The training that we give under the grant is similar to in-person training that we would give under a contract if you were to hire us to come in and do training. But it doesn't cost you anything, which is a really sweet deal in my opinion. And it's really benefited small communities, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture has continued to fund. In fact, like Krista mentioned, we have a grant for the current fiscal year, and we're able to take some of these training events nationwide. So we're pretty excited about that. We have a group of folks that historically have helped us in the past put these programs together. Either they participated as speakers, they helped put the PowerPoint presentations together, they provided data, background data, historical data, case study data, or they've done peer review on the presentations that we give. And then the associations on the right are the support groups that we have that supported us in our grant request, and they provide match in some way or another. They provide some funding match for the grant, which you have to have under a federal grant. I'm going to skip this one. This is stuff we already covered. Today we're going to go through fog inspection and grease pumpers. I'm going to talk about the preferred pumper program. I'm going to talk a little bit about data acquisition and data management. Ken is actually speaker 2. He's going to go over plan review, grease removal device or grease interceptor sizing and performance, and then a little bit of outside of the restaurant inspections. There's a lot of information that we're jamming into this 2-hour period. Well, hour and 40 minutes now, 50 minutes. So take notes. If you have questions, our contact information is at the end of the presentation. You could give any one of us a call or email us, and we will get back to you as quickly as we can. Like Krista said, we do encourage you guys to use the question box or the comment box on the GoToWebinar screen, and we appreciate comments and questions from our audience. So with that, Ken, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you go gangbusters here.
Okay, sounds good. So good afternoon, everybody. Is it showing my screen? Okay. Did it,
Do you have a question or?
no, I'm not, it's not showing my screen.
We see it on our end.
You see, what do you see? Oh,
Your
there it is.
PowerPoint.
Okay, sorry. It slide backed up on me one. All right. So as I spent my time doing that, I'll skip the introduction again and move on to the first slide, which is talking a bit about plan review. I'm not really going to cover plan review because we've discussed that, but we have talked about the importance of getting to know and work with your building and plumbing officials and the health department officials, and finding ways to, be part of the plan review process in some fashion, and particularly because this is your first and best opportunity to offer suggestions about the size or type of interceptor to be installed. And so we're going to get into grease interceptor sizing, because that's the information you need to know to be a part of that plan review. And off we go. So, First of all, it's generally, and certainly by the plumbing officials, interceptors are sized based on plumbing codes. And for the UPC, in 2006, the recommendations of the Code Development Task Force resulted in deleting the term grease trap. One of the reasons for that was because, or perhaps the prime reason for that was because a grease trap has a specific definition and serves a specific function that an interceptor can sometimes fill in an ancillary way, but for the most part does not. And so they added the term hydromechanical grease interceptor and removed the old table for selecting grease traps and added this new table for selecting the new hydromechanical grease interceptors based on drain fixture units. And this is the table 10.2 right from the chart from 2006 on. This chart's looks pretty much the same in every 3-year update code period that goes on. They also deleted Appendix H, which was dealing with gravity grease interceptors, and one of the reasons they deleted it was because it wasn't really scientifically nor technically based, and so it was getting harder to defend that to some of the questions and respond to some of the issues that came up. So it was replaced with the new table 10.3, which is now the table for gravity grease interceptor sizing, again based on drain fixture units. And in the plumbing codes, so what's generally used by plumbing and building officials, this is what they go by to determine what is proper sizing for an interceptor. So, what is a drain fixture unit? It's sometimes thought of as a flow rate. It's a design factor based on the rate of discharge. A fixture unit is equal to 1 cubic foot of water drained in a 1 1/4 inch pipe over 1 minute. And a cubic foot of water is about 7.5 gallons. So drain fixture units address sizing by accounting for operating conditions. But what they don't account for in any way, shape, or form is a level of grease production or even solids for that matter that may go down the sink. They're simply dealing with water and how it goes down the drain. So we have our first poll of the day next. So I'm going to hand this back briefly to Krista for that.
All right. Do you use the 25% rule to determine a grease interceptor's capacity? All right, almost everyone has voted, so I'm going to close it shortly. Please take it if you need core hours. Okay. I am closing it. Okay. This is pretty in line with what we see with other
Yes,
programs.
yes. For the 44% that asked what is the 25% rule, we are going to talk about that shortly. So we'll give you a definition of exactly what that is and how it came to be. For the 44% that responded in the affirmative, we are going to talk a little bit here on size and performance about why it may be time to rethink that portion of your sewer use ordinance.
All right. Brian wants to know if you can repeat what you stated was the relationship of a DFU compared to a cubic foot.
Oh, well, so the drain fixture unit is a measure of it's a flow rate. That's part of the design factor. It's based on the rate of discharge. So so a drain fixture unit, one drain fixture unit is equal to 1 cubic foot of water drained in a 1 1/4 inch pipe over 1 minute. And a cubic foot of water is 7.48 gallons. So a drain fixture unit is equal to 7.48 gallons drained in a 1 1/4 inch pipe over 1 minute. So you can.
Oh, go ahead.
So what I was going to say, I can go back here.
Here, let me hide.
Okay. So if you go back here, you can see, you know, a 1.5 inch commercial drain and both 1.5 and 2 are counted as 3 drain fixture units, which would mean that essentially about 22.5 gallons would drain through those in over a minute. Dishwasher unit, you would be looking at probably 30 gallons drained over a 1 minute period of time, et cetera, et cetera. So do we have one more poll question? First of all, did I answer that one okay?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure. If you have any further questions, Brian, just feel free to type in the chat box. And thank you for your question. Let's get to the next poll. Has your city or utility ever used visible grease in the outlet T to determine pump out frequency? All right, almost everyone voted. So I am going to close it and share. Hmm.
Well, it's good, but those people who answered no, I think when I start talking later on, I'll be able to talk about introducing this idea of looking at the visible grease and just another way to determine pump out frequency. Okay, thank you, Krista.
Thanks, guys. All right, we don't have any follow-up questions, so you can take it away, Ken.
Okay. So before we get into, you know, grease interceptor performance and how to determine sizing, one of the things we want to keep in mind is the effect of particle size, the significance of that on the performance of the interceptor. So this is I'm going to show a short video snippet here. These are ball bearings dropped into oil.
Ken,
The ball bearings all have the same specific gravity. The only
Ken?
difference between each of them is
I
their
just
size.
Thank you.
So you'll notice that the larger the size, the faster the descent, as we view it here. And I'm going to run this again really quickly because it happens so fast. So, you know, if we see here that the larger the size, the faster the descent. It works in reverse in the interceptor. The larger the particles, the faster the ascent. This is, you know, this is the effects of drag or resistance. If I flip it over here and take a look, this is a little more representative of grease in the interceptor. I simply turned this upside down, but you would it effectively demonstrates that the smaller the particle size, the longer it takes for that particle to rise to the surface. This video is intended to represent what happens in an interceptor. Most fog is in the 150 micron range of particle size. So as you can see here, that would be at 150 microns, it would be about 1 minute and 30 seconds for that to rise 3 inches. And so most of the fog starts out in the 150 micron range, but it doesn't get to the interceptor in that range because things happen like that, including turbulence, the additional breakup caused by detergents, and or sometimes turbulence and heat. All those things can break larger particles into smaller ones. And this is another factor to keep in mind when sizing your interceptor. It's also the reason we say interceptors are intended to capture 90, or in cases now 90+% of fog and not 100%, because you can see at 15 microns, which is what you frequently get with turbulence and detergents, it's going to take that 1 hour and 43 minutes to rise 3 inches instead of 1.5 minutes. So in terms of the interceptors, how does this relate to interceptors? Well, they separate fog through a combination of similar as well as different processes. This is a gravity grease interceptor. It's designed to have adequate retention time for that particle separation to take place. So, it comes through the inlet and sits in the interceptor for hopefully 60 to 90 minutes or more, at least 30 minutes, and have enough time for that to break up to the point where it's not being moved into the other chamber. You're going to get some of that, which is why there is some secondary containment, although newer gravity grease interceptor designs have smaller secondary chambers and larger main chambers to allow for better separation early on. But as the fog-laden wastewater sits in the interceptor, that allows gravity and buoyant force to push the fog up to collect on the surface of the water. Solids sink down to the bottom, and that's how gravity grease interceptors manage the capture. Hydromechanical grease interceptors are a little bit different. Gravity and buoyant force are still the main factors in the process of separation, but whereas GGIs are designed for retention time, they sit there, the water sits there, and the separation occurs over time. Hydromechanical grease interceptors are designed to work as the water is flowing through the unit. So, they're generally smaller, and there isn't a lot of retention time. So usually they include a flow control device to make sure that the water flows through at a steady rate and the unit doesn't get overwhelmed. It also includes a set of internal baffles at the inlet side, and these are designed to help spread the water out so that it flows the entire width of the interceptor rather than just dumped into the center of it. That's chiefly the difference between the gravity grease and the hydromechanical, is one's designed for it to sit and the other is designed for separation during flow. There are also some automated grease removal devices out there. This is a good diagram of one. Automated grease removal devices have been around for a long time, and most of them are mechanical that have skimmers like you see here that the oil tends to stick to that material, and then it's scraped off and drained into a recovery container and either taken to the grease barrel, or some self-cleaners put it in the solid waste. But the advantage of these are that they're lower to purchase, they're cheaper to install, and generally cheaper to maintain. The downside of these is that they need a regular in-house maintenance, and frequently the in-house maintenance doesn't happen. It just gets forgotten during the production day, or for whatever reason, sometimes they need, more than daily maintenance, even depending upon the grease production of your facility. And I know the city of San Francisco had updated their code about 7 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. And they were requiring everybody that didn't already have a grease removal device to install one of these. And eventually, in fact, it was less than a year, and they removed that from their code because they just found that that performance and maintenance issues are resulting in poor grease capture, and they looked for other solutions. So one of the things that we talk about is that, and we mentioned the Kennedy-Jenks brown grease study, is because that's used as the basis for some of these calculators that are a really, really excellent way now to determine exactly what the grease production capacity of a facility is. If you remember those 4 case studies that we talked about, and that went anywhere from about 4 times to about 18 times the amount of grease capture. When you get a calculator like this, you're able to determine exactly how much should be captured. So if they don't have an interceptor, you're able to determine what size would be appropriate for them and what an appropriate maintenance schedule might be. If they do have one, you can determine how much they should be capturing and take a look at what's actually being reported in the pump outs. And that will give you an idea of how much is being bypassed and sent into the system. This one can be found on the Shear Products webpage. This is part of their interceptor sizing calculator. It's a quick and easy way. You start with the grease retention capacity of the interceptor and divide that by the number of meals served per day times the grease production value, depending on the type of restaurant that it is. And that will reveal how frequently the interceptor will need to be pumped out in order to avoid fog bypass. And this sort of thing is one of the things we use to show the bypass that was going on in the for the little hydromechanical unit that you saw earlier, that it was being done every few weeks, and it needed to be done every 3 days. The one thing to remember when we talk about these categories, low, medium, high, and very high, is that sometimes they come across as a little bit threatening to food service establishments. They may not see themselves as a high grease producer or a very high grease producer, or may not even realize what those categories mean. They just sound like they elicit a very defensive response. So if you get that, you may find that it's easier to talk to folks about the factors and using these calculators, because factors are less threatening. This one comes from Ken Laux. This is from his grease interceptor sizing and selection guide, hydromechanical grease interceptor sizing and selection guide. It's also based on the Kennedy-Jenks brown grease study, but you can see all the different types of restaurants listed here, and the grease production factor based on whether they do or don't have fryer, and whether they do or don't have flatware, if they're just a takeout only type of place. But this is another one, and there are several others out there that use these types of factors in order to determine what an appropriate sized interceptor might be. So what you can also do as an alternate is take the grease factor from table 2 and times the number of meals per day times the number of days that an FSE wants to go between pump outs, and that will show them what the grease capacity requirement of their interceptor is going to be. This is particularly useful if you're working with them during the plan review process to determine what might go in and how they want to handle that. or during a retrofit process. If they decide they want to make, the days between pump out their chief factor, then you can use essentially the same figures, just in a different fashion to determine, okay, if you want to go 45 days or 60 days instead of 30, then your interceptor has to be size X instead of size Y. So we now also have high capacity hydromechanical units. The first ones came out in about 2006 when Shear launched their Great Basin series. These were the first third-party tested and rated devices, and they were the first ones with efficiencies and capacities that dramatically exceeded minimum performance requirements in product standards, such as the ASME A112. And shortly after Shear introduced the Great Basin series, others have had their products ready to come to market, including Thermoco with the Trapzilla series and Canplas IPEX with the Endura series. And there have been more interceptor manufacturers coming out with high capacity hydromechanicals, and I think there are even a few more on the way. So any manufacturer or prefabricator can build a gravity grease interceptor, but none of these tanks up till now have been tested for performance. All grease interceptors use that gravity differential separation we talked about, but they don't all operate with the same efficiency. And the GGIs, there is some movement to actually doing some field testing with those, but it hasn't happened to date because it's very, very expensive, and no one wants to pay for the cost of the testing. So the only way a jurisdiction can really be confident that approved devices work efficiently is to require that testing. And these high capacity hydromechanicals have certified grease storage capabilities that rival the assumed operational capacity of much larger gravity grease interceptors. And as a result, these have become a increasing share of the market. And there are areas to which these are brand new, but they are becoming more widespread, and there are more and more sizes and design styles, and they seem to be the wave of the future. So we mentioned the 25% rule, and one of the reasons we put that poll in there, and one of the reasons we asked that question is that the new high capacity interceptors have created a potential problem with the 25% rule. So the 25% rule says that when an interceptor reaches 25% of fog and solids in some combination, 25% by volume, it's at capacity and will start bypassing. It's pretty ubiquitous. It seems to have originally come from Hawaii, where a branch head that the Department of Environmental Services set out to determine, what is a working interceptor criteria for us here, and how can we effectively determine when an interceptor needs service. So he looked at the published performance testing data and used it to calculate the grease storage capacity as a percentage of total volume. So the data for all the models he reviewed calculated out between about 25 and 35%. And because they elected to be as protective of their sewer system as possible, they went with the more conservative 25%, and the 25% rule was kind of born. Wastewater utilities since have found it useful, and as we saw, many and we have not done one of these trainings in which a sizable percentage had not codified that into their sewer use ordinance. But as you can see, Here, this is a look at a gravity grease interceptor. It's got a 48-inch column, so using the 25% rule, if it's about 6 inches of grease on the top, about 6 inches of solids on the bottom, you would come out with 12 inches of that 48, so you'd be at 25%. And assuming these depths, which I think have historically been pretty average, you would calculate out that in this 1,000-gallon gravity grease interceptor, when it's ready for service, it will have retained 912 pounds of fats, oils, and grease. The new hydromechanicals, for example, here's the Endura XL 100. It can hold 20 inches of grease before you start seeing significant bypass, and about the same 6 inches of solids on the bottom. So that is on a unit this size, which is much smaller than the 1,000-gallon GGI. That's 1,058 pounds. So it's holding well over 100 pounds more than a much larger GGI unit. The Great Basin unit, which is a little bigger, holds 1,076 pounds of FOG and can retain about 10 inches of solids before you start seeing significant bypass. And the Trapzilla one on the end, which is a larger unit yet, will hold almost twice as much grease as a 1,000-gallon GGI, and not quite twice as much solids, all in a unit that would cost much less to purchase and much less to install. And if you had the capability of allowing it, it would be serviced much less frequently than the GGI would require. So you can see that if the 25% rule were in effect for any of these three high capacity hydromechanical interceptors, it would really prevent them from operating at peak efficiency and required much more frequent pump outs than the test data shows would be required in order to prevent catastrophic bypass to your system. So this is a look at one of those efficiency reports. You can see that when this is full, it's actually a little bit before 100% capacity. You see a little dip, and then after that, there's just catastrophic bypass into the system. But prior to that, up until about 95% or so, and you can see it starts out capturing about 96. I think it's 96.5% on this one. You can see that it's just a very low drop in terms of the amount of grease it captures until it hits that 95%, and then it goes on. And if you were to use the 25% rule, you would be servicing this way more frequently than necessary. So just to review this, we have the one sizing method, which is to determine what size, they'll both use to be determining what size grease storage capacity you need. This one, you'll take the number of meals per day times the amount of grease times the days between the pump outs, and it'll show you the grease capacity storage needed. It actually, the other way, actually this one needs to be redone because this one is it should be the customers or meals per day times the grease per meal divided by the grease storage capacity will give you the days between pump outs. And the other method is to use the customers per day times the grease per meal times the days between pump outs to get the grease storage capacity needed. So both of those are ways of looking at how to size your interceptor. So before we move on and start taking a short look for me in the exterior of the FSE, and Ed takes you inside, we have one more poll.
Okay. Does your sewer use ordinance have the flexibility to allow pump out based on manufacturer's rated capacity? And someone asks if there's a link to download the slides, and the answer is yes. You can download them on westernstatesalliance.org. And I am typing that out.
Yeah, the training page that was circled on the front page earlier, and we'll show the full training page at the end of this. We'll show you that the first 4 links there are the 4 presentations last Monday and Wednesday and Monday and Wednesday of this week. They're all there in PDF format.
I think there's also a link on the Western States Alliance website to one or maybe 2 of the grease calculators,
Yep.
the manufacturer's calculators. So
Yep.
those are available online also.
We
Yes.
encourage you guys to use them. All right, let's close the poll. Wow. Wow. That's a big percentage of not sure.
Well, to their credit, that takes a little bit of knowledge about the sewer use ordinance and knowing more about manufactured rated capacity. So there's a lot of room to learn here.
For sure. Let's get to the next poll. Go ahead.
And Clayton made the point earlier that this is all pretty new, so.
Does your sewer use ordinance have the flexibility to allow pump out based on FOG production calculators? Okay, almost everyone voted. So I'm going to close it. Okay. Comments, guys?
My only comment would be that, hopefully we've given you some ideas of how to present and some information about, sufficient information about those FOG production calculators that if you decide to address a change in the sewer use ordinance, you'll have the information needed to make your case.
All right. Looks like we don't have any follow-up questions, so you can take it away.
Okay. So one of the things you'll see outside the restaurant is issues with where the grease interceptor is located. Some of them put them in pretty accessible points, and it's pretty easy to see, pretty easy to inspect, pretty easy to clean. But some of them, like this one here, it appears that the chief function of the chief criteria when this was installed was making it as inobtrusive as possible and as invisible to the public eye as could be, which may mean that this is going to be an issue for inspectors and particularly for pumpers to get in and really do a good job pressure washing this thing. So the location of the interceptor with those things in mind is going to be very important. Also, in the picture to the right, it looks like that was something that was designed as sort of an afterthought. My question is, what are the chances that this thing is regularly going to be cleaned out? And even beyond that, what are the chances that the staff, as we go through turnover issues, what are the chances is that the staff is regularly made aware that it even exists? Another thing that you'll frequently see outside the interceptor is, and we've talked about it and we will talk about it again, is floor drains. In this particular one, you can see that it's been loose and it's impacted with a lot of solids and a lot of greasy material. And in fact, what may be happening now is that they're, when they hose everything down and clean it, they take that off so that it drains faster, which is just going to continue the buildup process until that's almost not workable. So making sure that the floor drains are cleaned and secured is something you'll want to see in a food service establishment. There are other drain issues as well. You can see in the upper left, this is a floor sink drain. It's being used as a condensate drain, which, fine, but it's also full of debris and fat, soils, and grease from floor cleaning, and eventually is not going to be very effective as a condensate drain, and may even create some health problems in the future. The hand wash sink is nice and sparkling, clean, and available. The pot wash sink, the 3-compartment sink, may be full. And so this is an easy place for, in this case, probably the kitchen staff, the food service staff, brought this in from a location where it was not being necessarily refrigerated. And so maybe it couldn't be put back in the walk-in and served again, or maybe it just, that's just their habit. Whatever. In this case, they're dumping salad dressing, which is full of oil, down the sink in the hand wash area. So you're going to have fog problems coming from the hand wash sink, and if it's not tied into the interceptor, out is going into the collection system. Deck washes can be huge problems. You can see here, looks like they've got some kind of a scrub brush there, as well as the squeegee. Frequently what I've seen is people laying down a nice heavy layer of fresh soapy mop water and letting it sit for a while to loosen everything. Makes it easier to scrub and pick up. And just as easy is to take that squeegee and push that all down into the floor drain, and then maybe later come by that with just a clean water mop to pick up any soapy residue or anything left on the floor. And that can be a tremendous amount of fats, oils, and grease going down the drain if it's not tied into the interceptor. Here you can see, both, this is in a strainer basket under the sink, but there are places that don't have something like that. So that might all be going down the drain. Also the macaroni and cheese there, very popular in a lot of restaurants. Also something that as frequently as not is just washed out with a high pressure hose in the 3-compartment sink, and everything drained on down. The tray on the bottom right was put there to collect grease drippings. Great idea, it keeps it off the floor, contains everything. Unfortunately, what the inspector found out was that at the end of the day, they take that and dump it down the sink and then just put it back down under the unit for service the next day. You can take a look here. Dishwashers, we talked about tying all fixtures into the interceptor, and with dishwashers you can see exactly how much solids and fog is going to be coming out of those units and going right down the drain into your sewer system if they're not tied into the interceptor. It's also a good look at why you want solid separators on a lot of these types of things, so that you can keep the big food particles from even reaching the interceptor to begin with, and using, if you can use less capacity for solids, you have more capacity for grease. This is a look at the sewer outside. It was just cleaned out and actually did a real nice job cleaning it out. And this is what they found after the first cycle came through from the dishwasher. It kind of comes in from the left-hand side there and exits down towards the right, lower hand of the right. And you can see that little eddy there that really doesn't go anywhere, that a lot of particulate is being washed up into there. And that's probably just going to continually to build up until it becomes a blockage of some kind. Also, we touched the other day on vent hoods, and these can be major sources of fog discharge. Usually, they're regulated for cleaning, particularly if they have a fire suppression system on, and more of them do because vent hood stack fires, vent hood fires are the #1 cause of fires in restaurants. And as you see here, they've effectively tarped everything off, so it's ready for cleaning. Now they're going to spray some sort of detergent or a chemical cleaning agent in there and wash everything down onto the floor. The bottom left, you can see just a significant amount of grease that was washed out and now needs to be picked up off the floor, or as you see on the right, squeegeed into the floor drain and out into the sewer system unless it's tied in. So one of the inspectors that I knew, he first found this out when he walked by, and there was a hose going up to the roof of the restaurant, and he kind of wondered what was going on. And when he went up there to take a look, found this picture of the roof vents, and you can see that there's grease stains there, and there is a collection of greasy material in the little catch area there. And it turns out that there are significant amounts of grease that can come. Not everything clings to the side of the hood vent. Some of it is pulled right on out and deposited on the air makeup units themselves, the exhaust vents themselves, and deposited onto the roof, where they can go down the roof drains. You can see the water collecting on the bottom left, waiting for a wet weather event to help wash it all down a roof drain. And you can see the roof drains themselves in the upper left with the collection of grease and greasy material around them. You can also see on the impeller and on the hood plenum, the fan exhaust vent plenum rather, all of the grease that has been collecting on there over the period of operation. And one of the biggest issues with this is that some of the roof drains are tied into the sanitary sewer, but they're probably not tied into an interceptor, and no one would think to do that. And yet here's going to be a fog issue that you're going to have to deal with. The other possibility is that these just drain right into a storm drain out in the street and get discharged more often than not to some body of water. And then you have an illicit stormwater discharge. So these are some of the things that you'll see outside the restaurant. Now Ed's going to take us on a deep dive of things he's seen inside the restaurant. And I am going to pass this over to him while I ask if there are any questions.
Don't think so. Nope, no questions.
Okay, all yours, Ed.
Oh, all right. Here I am, popped up here. I think I needed another third cup of coffee this afternoon. It's just kind of an overcast, cloudy day here. Just not to go through, you all know that, what I did before as far as the restaurant and the schooling, and probably the highlight of the part of my life that I thoroughly enjoyed this occupation is being a source control specialist there at Clackamas County. and also learning about FOG. It was a good experience. Like I've said before, working with FOG, it kind of sticks with you. So all right, so move on. All right. I think we got before I go on, I think we have a polling slide here from Krista.
Okay. A very common cause of grease interceptor problems is, please select one from the below options. All right. Almost everyone has voted. So I'm going to close it. Wow.
Yeah, that's very good. Once again, I think this is like one of those things. There's not a incorrect answer. All answers are correct. And so,
No,
sounds
but
like we got, go ahead.
it is, the other presenters can also chime in, but that all of the above, I think that's the highest we've seen
And
at
that means
almost
we've got a lot
70%.
of smart people out there too.
Definitely. Any comments, guys? No?
Right. I think that's once again, this is just really all of the above is a very all-inclusive answer, but I think each of these people are speaking from their experience of what they've seen. Yeah, thank
All
you.
right. Next question is, what time frame do you allow for grease interceptor replacement due to catastrophic failure?
Wow.
I know. Wow. Interesting group.
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay, almost everyone has voted. If you can, please do take the poll in the next few seconds. Okay, I think that's good enough. Okay. That's, I think, the largest percentage we've seen for 0 to 3 months.
Correct. I agree with you, Krista. It's an impressive. I guess what got people there in Wyoming, once they say something, they mean it.
Yeah. And Brian says, hopefully we learn about said catastrophic failure.
Stay tuned, Brian.
Oh dear. Okay.
All right, here we go. We're moving on. You know what I'm going to be talking and highlighting a lot of hydromechanical grease interceptors, or commonly known as grease traps, and also gravity grease interceptors. And those are the outside grease interceptors that most people are accustomed to, that are generally concrete. But what again, and most of all, is talk to you about what you may need to implement some changes in your FOG program. One of my favorite things about this picture here on the left, it just shows you that how multi-useful or how multi-use clamps are right here. And once again, they're designed to hold things down, hold things together, and that's exactly what it's doing here on this hydromechanical grease interceptor. What it done is the grease has just this interceptor has been just full to the max, and has created so much pressure on the inside that it started popping the lid. And what this restaurant did is they just got some of these C-clamps and just tightened it down so it wouldn't happen. Eventually what's going to happen here is a line's going to get plugged, and all this discharge that's been going into the trap is going to end up on the kitchen floor right there. Then it's going to be one big mess. and it's going to cost them a whole lot more than the clean out would have on this interceptor. I've actually seen the same kind of thing, but people putting cinder blocks on top. Just that always humors me, because I knowing that, you know, the best answer is call a pumper, come and clean it out. The same thing's on the left. Here it is. If you ever walk into a restaurant and you're seeing stains like this on top of the hydromechanical grease interceptor, they need to increase they definitely do need to increase their pump outs. And once again, I'm sure this gasket that's between the lid and the trap itself is definitely worn out. And 110% capacity is not an exaggeration. Top left-hand side, catastrophic failure. That's exactly what it is. This is an example what the inspector would have never seen this if he hadn't been there during the pump out. Chances are, if he had just gone in, done the inspection, received the paperwork from the restaurant, I got to pump out, done on a regular basis, the inspector would have never known this thing was gone bad. Obviously the restaurant is happy with it, because I guarantee you he knows about this, because the pumper who has pumped it out has told him numerous times, more likely, if they change pumpers, and they chose to ignore it, because he just knows what happens is the grease is just sinking into the ground there and just going away, and that means there's just another outlet for his grease interceptor. But yes, this is a catastrophic failure. And if you see this is definitely, as you guys said earlier in the polls there, with close to 70% of you would need to get done right away. The one here on the bottom left there, bottom right, excuse me, the main reason I like this particular slide, and I'll have another one later on that shows the similar kind of thing, is when grease is gray like this, it's really a pretty good indication. It needs to get pumped out. Needs to get pumped out more often. And the color on the left is kind of a fresher grease, but when you see it like this on the left-hand side of that interceptor, it's been a while, and that definitely the pump outs need to happen more often. The main reason showing this is pumpers work hard. They're put in all kinds of conditions, and they're expected to clean up the fog that comes out, that gets collected in grease traps. And this is first of all, this one should have never been installed to where it is. That's a no-no, and I guarantee you he did not get a permit to get this installed. But there's no way in the world this guy is going to be able to clean it out completely. And by cleaning it out completely, I mean removing all the grease on the inside. It means scraping the walls of the grease interceptor, pulling the baffles out and scraping them out, and make sure they're all free and clean on both sides. One is the lid is not going to come off. The other is the baffles are not going to be able to be removed. And the other is there's no way in the world he's going to end up cleaning all of the grease out of the interceptor. And bottom line is, what's happening is the restaurant's paying good money to get this thing pumped out. I don't know, it's going to cost anywhere from $90 to $150, I'm guessing, to get this pumped out. And he's not getting it cleaned out completely. So once again, the restaurant itself is thinking he's saving a nickel, but it's end up costing him $1 on inefficient pump outs. Interceptors get put in backwards, and may it be the hydromechanicals or the gravity grease interceptors, and you do see it happens. And there's two different ways to address it. The number one is, as the most people would do, is that this needs to be changed. This needs to be corrected. This needs to be pulled out. This is a concrete floor. This needs to be pulled out. And I doubt if this one could be reused, but then the next interceptor should be put in with the correct direction. And once again, I've seen the same thing with a gravity grease interceptor, where the vault was put in backwards. And once again, the chances in this case, there's no way in the world he was going to have it redone. And like I said, it's going to cost him anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 to do that. but there's no way in the world he's going to do it. So he ended up having it pumped out much more often than if it had been put in correctly in the first place. Also, the other thing too is that earlier we talked about your involvement with the plumbing inspector and your involvement with the plan review. A lot of these items can be solved at that point. So if you had been involved in that process, chances are you would have seen this, and you would have pointed out to the plumbing inspector that this was incorrectly done, and plumbing inspector would have made sure that he first of all, he would have been embarrassed that he missed it, but the same thing is it would have been able to get corrected at the very beginning of the restaurant's opening. There's a Waffle House and there's waffle traps. Exactly what it is. I mean, but what I like about this particular interceptor, it shows you that how strong and how impacted grease can get in an interceptor. And you notice here on the left-hand side, as the grease layer was caved in, you can still see how much grease is on the inside. You know what's happening here is it surprised me that it hasn't backed up into the kitchen in this area here. But there's a channel through the grease here, a water channel, a little tunnel of water was able to come in and go out. But the other thing that I don't think people, excuse me, I think one area that probably needs a little bit more attention. One, this guy's not paying for getting his pumped out as much as he should. So that means the grease that this interceptor could potentially capture is going to the public sewer. So instead of the restaurant paying to remove the grease, guess what's happening? The utility or the municipality here, when they do the line cleaning, they're cleaning the grease out that the restaurant should have gotten. This almost goes for the same discussion here. Here's a restaurant, here's a interceptor that's being pumped out once a month, and it's costing them about $120 a month here to get this thing pumped out. However, if you use the 25% rule on this particular interceptor, it should be pumped out every 5 days. There's a big difference here in the amount of times this guy should have this interceptor pumped out. Just like I said on the previous slide, if the grease isn't being collected by the restaurant to where it's generated, it's being discharged to the utility, and the utility takes the responsibility of cleaning the grease up, and consequently, the ratepayer is paying for the grease to be cleaned up of something that the restaurant should be paying for. Something that became what do you call it? I guess almost a slow learner on this one, or a slow believer on this one. This is an inspection port, and often when grease interceptor gets pumped out in this hydromechanical here, you would pump it out completely. You'd scrape all the grease off the side. You'd pull out the baffles and get those off. But what happens down the inspection port? What do you do if the thing is filled full of grease there? You're not cleaning it out completely. So when first time I saw that, then I noticed that the pumper wasn't really doing it as I thought. Then I asked, he cleaned it all up, it was all done, and I said, hey, before you turn the water back on, pour some hot water down this inspection port and see what happens. And sure enough, he took some hot water and he poured it down the inspection port there. And at the bottom of the interceptor here, grease just poured out. That's surprised him, not really surprised him, but he was like, oh, wow. And it surprised me is how much grease is impacted at this point. Once again, if the restaurant is paying for someone to clean out their their interceptor, it should be cleaned out completely, including the inspection port. And once again, you as the inspector can come and notice that. And so the next time you're out there and seeing inspection, point that out to the grease pumper, and it may be a learning experience for him too. Bypass. This is not catastrophic, but this is definitely bypass. And one of the areas that Ken was talking about is the 25% rule. That really it is a tool that you can use to measure if an interceptor needs to be pumped out more often or not. With these more advanced, the newer brands of hydromechanicals grease interceptors, the plastic ones which you see out there, they're round or various oblong shapes. And what happens is they're a higher capacity. And once again, the data from these companies proves that they can capture far more grease than your typical square rectangular box or your rectangular box. And they got the data to prove it, and they do work. However, if you can't particularly measure the grease as far as in it, you can always look at the discharge port. And looking at the top photo, looking down there, the grease doesn't look bad. And once again, you're looking at the slide there, and you can see the grease around the rim. And it doesn't look bad, but if you look through the water, and you can see the scum, the grease is just filled with the being lined in with the discharge port. The picture on the top right, it even shows it better. Once the water level is pumped out and you look in there, look at all the grease that was there below the water level. And particularly if you look at the lateral that's going out, the discharge port to the lateral, look at that grease. Once again, that's grease that should be collected by the restaurant in their interceptor, not discharged to the public sewer. Anytime someone installs a grease interceptor, and this is particularly as a gravity grease interceptor, the general rule that just seems like not rule, the common saying, so to speak, is if you got the hydromechanical device on the inside, you get pumped out once a month. The gravity grease interceptor gets pumped out every quarter or every 6 months. And sure enough, that's what happened here. The engineering design for this was getting pumped out every 3 months. And 1,000-gallon trap, that's not unusual. However, not even a month in the service, and look at the grease starting to accumulate. And I'm using the word starting because this isn't bad. If I'd seen this at the end of the 3-month period or the 2.5 months into the pump out cycle, it would be no big deal. But 22 days, yeah, as a red flag out there waving and saying, hey folks, you need to pay attention. And good for this inspector, this FOG inspector, because he came back after another 30 days. So after a month and a half, here he was looking at it. And this is a month and a half into or halfway through a pump out cycle. And once again, look at the top of the water. The water looks fine, looks nice. But if you can look below the surface, look really, really close, and you can almost see these growth, all this grease that's just kind of formed up on the inside here. Just like the previous slide, guess where that grease is going? You got it. It's going to the public sewer, and this restaurant's giving the municipality here the opportunity to clean up their grease for them. Isn't that nice of them? Here's another. This I think it really shows it nicely. What I like it is this particular one was designed to be pumped out every 30 days. And look, here they are 2.5 weeks into the process, or almost 3 weeks. Look at the amount of grease. I mean, once again, if you look at the left-hand side, it doesn't look bad. But as soon as that water level drops, look at the coating of the grease on the inside of that discharge tee. And once again, if you look at the port going to the lateral, that grease there, this particular interceptor should be pumped out at least every 2 weeks. And it would be a completely different picture. Another thing to kind of look at, and I kind of hinted that on a previous handful of slides ago, was pay attention to the color. Once again, this is not a solid rule, but if you're seeing grease that's accumulated there on the top left, that's caking up like this, and it's gray, that grease has been there a long time. And if it's looking like this up on the top, you can imagine what it looks like far below. And once again, that bottom left there, that nice, looks like a nice little Mexican restaurant potentially, is you'll get to know the grease, and you'll get to know the I guess the density of it and with the restaurant. So it's just your experience with it. And once again, all I'm trying to do is show you here is there's the 25% rule, there's the look at the discharge T side, there's the manufacturer's specs on deciding how often it gets pumped out, and also just take a look at the color. So when you're getting two or three of these indicators all coming up at once, it's telling you that the pump out cycle probably does need to be increased. Oh, by the way, through this whole process that I've talked about, I kind of missed saying this stuff, is that this isn't just between you and the interceptor. This is between you, the restaurant manager or the owner, and the interceptor. All that information that you've observed and you've looked at here, this information should be relayed to the manager. You know, don't play I got a secret here. Let them know. Because what's a good indicator with that, you know that one slide, handful of slides back where you started to see the bubbles coming up and you're not even a month into the 3-month pump cycle? If he had pointed that out to the restaurant manager and saying, hey, you know, I'm seeing a lot of grease here, and this isn't, I'm not saying that needs to be pumped out right now, but I'm just telling you that I think 3 months is going to be a problem. But let's see how it goes. And what you're doing is sharing information, and when you do end up having to make a decision about increasing pump out cycles, it's not a surprise. It's and it helps you, I guess, to increase the efficiency of the restaurants and their job to collect all the grease that they generate before it goes to the public system. This is a catastrophic failure. Yep. Here, this is a restaurant that was just, it wasn't maintained, it wasn't taken care of. Grease definitely built up. It was over a period of 3 years. And what's happened is that the grease is just built up so strong, so thickly rather, and it's on the walls. And you think, what's the big deal? So grease is building up. It's not the grease that's the big deal. It's what's happening to the concrete behind the grease is a big deal. Is what happens, this grease ends up this developing an acidic attraction to the grease, to the concrete, and it's just eating away at it. And it's deteriorating this interceptor. Like I said, it costs you $15,000, $25,000 to have these things installed, and then you don't take care of it, and you end up having this grease build up and just basically destroying your investment. Here, this is what's great about the picture here on the right-hand side. What this shows you is that you can look at the charcoal color there on the side of this gravity grease interceptor, and that's the water level. And you know what's kind of nice? Look how smooth the concrete is there relatively, and that's just the water layer. But see that little tan and where that's the grease layer. And if you're looking at the brown, and if you look at the aggregate really closely, you can see the aggregates being eaten away. And see those little colored circles there? Those are little plastic devices that the manufacturer puts in the interceptors, and they do that they're able to shore up the wall when they pour the concrete. However, what it shows you is the gray down there is the water, the brown there is where the grease layer has been, and where the looked like maybe 3 inches thick right there, that's where they've had that ledge grease that we saw earlier. When that grease is built up against the wall there, it just eats away at the aggregate, eats away at the concrete, exposing the aggregate. And when you see this, what it tells you is that this is a matter of, it's not a matter, it's a matter of time that this interceptor is going to fail majorly. It's going to have to be replaced, because what you're seeing here, this isn't the only place that it goes like this all the way around at this level. The concrete is being eaten away. When you see this, share it with the manager, telling the manager what's happening, or with the owner, tell him that this is a bad thing. And it's just going to be a matter of time where this is going to have to be replaced. So start thinking about saving your money to replace this interceptor, because it's going to be expensive. Here, this is a really an excellent example here. The concrete, how beautiful, smooth it is, gets right down there to this, as I call it, or we call it ledge grease. This is a buildup of grease that hasn't been cleaned off. Look at the aggregate below it. You can see the exposed aggregate, and that's where, once again, the grease is just eating it away. If you pull, once this ledge grease is removed, you're going to see much more aggregate exposed, because grease does a nasty job to concrete. It really does. It really does a really horrible job as far as destroying the investment that the restaurant has purchased to capture this grease. And the other part too, the restaurant is paying to have it cleaned. The interceptor, the pumper is supposed to clean this out. He's supposed to clean this. He's supposed to knock this ledge grease off, or power wash it off, or remove the grease. He's not doing the job he's being paid for. So once again, if you're an inspector, you go out there, you see this, point it out to the restaurant, tell the restaurant he's not getting his money's worth. He should have this. The pumper should be removing this grease, and not only to get doing his job, but also not allowing the interceptor to be deteriorated any further. One of my favorite pictures. This is a geologic layers of an interceptor. Looking at the very bottom, kudos to the pumper. He did a fantastic job of cleaning this thing out. And you can see it like that light little brown charcoal color down there. That's where that's when the solids layer was down there. And it does have an effect on the concrete, but not as much as the floating grease. The little darker charcoal color, that's where the water layer is. And look above it, sure enough, all the aggregate that's being exposed. This is an interceptor that has not been pumped out on a regular basis. And the other thing, if you had been using the 25% rule right here, look at it. If you add up the dimensions of the solids at the bottom and the grease layer that's quite obvious with all the exposed aggregate, that is more than 60% of the interceptor was filled full of grease, of fog and solids, or grease and solids at the bottom. Once again, even by the 25% rule, this should have never, ever happened. Hey, Krista, got a polling slide. Tell you what, can you just do 1 versus 2?
Yeah, definitely. We don't need to do the last one.
Okay, thank you.
And we did get a question though. I'll ask it after let's say the question. Do you work or coordinate with your grease pumpers? So Brian says the last failure he was made aware of was a result of hotel guests filing an odor complaint with our local health department. By that time, the hotel had excavated their GGI and attempted to patch the leak where the halves meet. It continued leaking and discharge from the GGI was filling the excavation and leaching into the ground.
Yeah.
Who knows how long this had been going on? Very true.
Yeah, very, very true. And once again, this is not, these aren't septic tanks. These are grease interceptors. It's supposed to capture everything. And it's not unusual too. Sometimes what happens is the seal breaks between the top portion of the interceptor and the lower portion. This is kind of one of the innovations that we've worked on with the various pumping interceptor manufacturers. Is an idea we gave them is when the interceptors generally come in 2 different sizes. Put the bottom, then they put the cap on. And a lot of times that cap was below the water level, and our suggestion was that the top layer gets set on above the water level, and that way you don't have any leakage that out into the ground. All right, go ahead. Stop talking.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Ed.
Mhm.
So these are the results from the poll.
Nice.
Pretty typical, I think.
It's kind of nice. And once again, it really pays off to work with a pumper. It truly does.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and pop down here. These are just kind of summing things up here. The top left, and if you come in and you're doing inspection and you pop the manhole and you see this, let the restaurant know right away, because it's just a matter of time, a very brief time, when something's going to back up somewhere. And the restaurant manager will say thank you for letting him know, but at the same time, the follow-up is, why did this happen? Were the interceptor not being pumped out correctly, discharging more stuff into the interceptor that should have happened? You know, something needs to be fixed here. The two slides on the top and right there, that just once again, that shows you the example of looking into the discharge port, the T there, and seeing the grease that's accumulated. If you're seeing this before the pump out cycle, it's first thing to do is just to make sure, go out and look at your lateral, go out and look at your public line. I guarantee you'll be seeing grease out there. Once again, let the restaurant know that you're doing this, let them know that it's accumulating, and chances are they're going to end up having to increase their pump outs. And yep, the one on the bottom, the water, they didn't have any clamps or cinder blocks on these manholes, so they popped their lid, so to speak. And sure enough, you pull up into a restaurant and you see this, yeah, you definitely have got issues. So all again, everything looks good. The left and the right and the bottom, when you see clean water like this and grease on the one side and clear water on the right, you got yourself a nice system. Discharge port, the inspection port, all nice and clean like that on the inside. You got yourself a good system. Pat yourself on the back. What to talk about now is just doing the restaurant inspection. And chances are what you've already done the initial inspection. And so you've done the hard one, where you've done most of the work. But when you go out there on your annual basis, or you're there during the pump out and it's time for to do the casual inspection, or the regular maintenance inspection, is main purpose is make sure you got all your data correct. You know, check your data, your data management tool. Make sure you got all the right names and telephone numbers and addresses, and just make sure that's up to date. It's surprising if you don't put in data when there's changes that you were told about. It's kind of embarrassing when you utilize that old data that someone told you what the new data was, and you had forgot to put it in. So it's a good time to catch up on your paperwork. Also, has the restaurant changed? Is it now discharging more grease than it was before? Has the level has it gone from a medium to a high producer of fog? Yeah. Note it in your system. Note it in your logs. Any new fixtures? That's always a surprise. Sometimes you come in and you see a brand new fixture, or something's been replaced inside the system. Did they connect this to the to the gravity grease interceptor or to the hydromechanical? Is it connected? If it didn't connect, why didn't they? That's the question. And also, just once again confirming which fixtures are connected to the interceptor, and go out and before you probably did the inspection, or you should see if there's any videos of the lines. Has the collection crew got any new videos of the line? Is there any new grease showing up in the public sewer? You know, check the public sewer too before you pull up to the restaurant. Look down there, see if there's any grease in the downstream of the restaurant in the public sewer. And once again, when you're at the restaurant too, if there's an outside interceptor, pop the lid, check it out. Look at that discharge T and tell me what you see, or tell the restaurant what you see. And lastly, does the maintenance frequency need to change? Here's the time where you've had this discussion with the restaurant before that you're seeing these changes that are happening. They may need to change the frequency. Well, this is the time. Speak up and have it changed. All right, grease pumpers have nothing but good to say about them. Once again, get to know who they are, get to know the pumpers are, the drivers are, the dispatchers are, and also remember, just like Clayton said, know your stakeholders. This is an important, I repeat, an important stakeholder. Kudos to these guys. They do a good job. I told you about the guy on the left, the guy on the right. These wands here, these grease wands are heavy. If you personally have never picked one up or moved one from one side of the interceptor to the X, put your gloves on and do it one time. It will give you a completely different job, gives you much more respect for the hard work that these guys do. Bottom line, self-cleaners. There is no difference between a self-cleaner cleaning out his interceptor or a professional pumper coming and doing it. You should treat them exactly the same. If you're having a pumper's report their pump outs to you, the self-cleaner needs to do the same thing. 2 words of advice. Have them take a picture of the pump out, of their clean out, and send that to you. That gives you documentation, and then it's date stamped. And the other is to make sure that they have a grease barrel and back that exclusively for the grease that comes out of the interceptor. So when they clean this thing out barely ever, because it doesn't feel that much, but 3 times, they'll have to call the pumper that comes out and cleans, pumps the barrel out. That barrel is not the same barrel as the fryer grease grows in. This barrel is strictly for grease interceptor grease. So with that note, I'm going to turn you over to Clayton Brown. So Clayton, are you there?
Yep.
All right.
Here
we go. Mr. Clayton, it's all yours. Wrap her up.
All right. Thanks, Ed. We talked, and Ed introduced you to the Preferred Pumper Program. This program in the Portland metro area has been an absolute boon for not only the restaurants and the municipalities, but for the pumpers. We started in 2004, I think. We were asked to meet with the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, and we talked to them about the fact that many of the municipalities were getting ready to put FOG programs together. And they asked if we would please work with the pumpers, because the Restaurant and Lodging Association members felt like some pumpers were not providing the services that the restaurants felt they needed. We borrowed the Preferred Hauler program from Jacksonville, Florida, and adapted it to basically the Pacific Northwest. So we have communities all the way up into the Puget Sound area and clear down to Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon that use the Preferred Pumper Program standards that were developed in our area. We worked with the pumpers to create a set of performance standards for the pumpers, and then we worked with the pumpers' input to create performance standards for the municipal FOG inspectors. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. The important thing was that the performance standards for the pumpers were set up to provide a high level of service for the restaurants. The Preferred Pumper Program in our area is a voluntary program, so a pumper doesn't have to be part of it. There's no regulation that requires it. However, there are a couple of municipal members of the Preferred Pumper Program that actually have written into their city code that restaurants have to use a preferred pumper. So that's one way of, encouraging your pumpers to all become voluntary members of the Preferred Pumper Program. The website with all of the information on it is preferredpumper.org. It has the performance standards, the list of pumpers, the list of municipal members in the Portland metro area. Every preferred pumper follows approved best practices for interceptor service, and the owner of the company has signed a certificate, and it's on file with the preferred pumper, the secretary of our preferred pumper group, that says, I've read and I understand the maintenance practices, blah, blah, blah. And here's my signature and here's the date. The pumpers submit schedules of maintenance a week in advance so that any city that needs to have an inspector go out and observe a pump out knows where the pumpers are going to be in his service area and when. The pumpers also give the municipalities the cell phone numbers for the drivers so that and vice versa, the inspector typically, the inspector's phone numbers are known by the pumping drivers also. So if they're going to be late to a site, they can call the inspector, or if the inspector's at a site and there's no pumper there, he can call the pumper and find out what happened, because those schedules have to be flexible. There are times where there's an emergency and the pumpers have to go somewhere else and they can't get out to the Applebee's or the Trader Joe's or wherever it is that they were supposed to be. The pumpers submit their pump out reports within 10 days of the service at the restaurant. And right now, for a lot of the municipalities, they get paper reports. So we're in the process of trying to change that and get electronic reporting set up so that the pumpers all use the same system to report the services that they've provided. I don't know if Ed talked about it this time, but in the past, he's mentioned the fact that the preferred pumper program works really well if there's good oversight by the municipalities, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that your service schedules so that you can plan your interceptor inspections or the pump out inspections. Working with the pumpers, they're usually pretty close, pretty accurate. The service reports, most of the pumpers now are getting those reports in within 10 days of service. In the past, we haven't gotten good cooperation from all pumpers at the same level of performance. So it's kind of interesting. When we first started the preferred pumper program here in Oregon, I think we had 6 or 7 pumpers that were listed. There's a bunch more than that now. And some of the original pumpers are gone because they couldn't meet the performance standards, or they refused to, or somebody came in and bought them out. So that's kind of the bad, or the pump out reports aren't submitted on time. So remember, you do need to provide oversight for the pump outs. If you can't get out there during the service itself, go out first thing in the morning, because the water should be pretty clear. The restaurant hasn't been open for very long, and you should be able to see, well, if not all the way to the bottom, pretty close to the bottom of the interceptor. And you can check for the ridge grease and make sure that if it's a hydromechanical unit, that the baffles are clean and the inspection ports are clean. The transfer piping is clean. Those are important aspects of the maintenance standard that the preferred pumpers have agreed to. Like I said, we worked with the pumpers. Actually, the pumpers, for the most part, wrote the performance standards. The standards are published on the preferred pumper website. We do meet, the municipalities meet monthly, or we did before COVID hit anyway. Now we're doing kind of the same thing as we're doing here with online meetings. But there's a group of municipal FOG inspectors that meet once a month. And about once a quarter, we bring a pumper in and go through any question and answer period. You know, how's it going? How are you doing with the reports? If they're one of the recalcitrant pumpers that's typically late, we may encourage them to get back on board, and there's a possibility that they could be put on probation in the preferred pumper group. So that's happened a couple of times. We've actually taken one pumper off, and within 2 weeks he was requesting to get back on, knowing he had a 6-month probationary period to go through. We do provide training to the new pumpers or new drivers upon request. Ed Gilmore used to do a lot of that training. He and Paul Kramer and Ollie Dirks from City of Portland. That has not happened that much since Ed retired. So just keep that in mind, Mr. Ed. This is the information that's on the website, the preferred pumper cleaning standards for gravity grease and hydromechanical units. So you can take a look at that. There's a lot of information on that site, and the information from the preferred pumper site, the performance standards are used in a lot broader area than just the Portland metropolitan region. So like I said, the standards are used up in the Puget Sound area, Tacoma, Seattle, Gig Harbor, Bellingham, Washington, up in Canada, up in the British Columbia area. They've used the standards. They're used all through Oregon, and there are some communities in Idaho that use them too. So Krista, do we have any questions?
I don't think so. Nope.
Well, it's time for a polling slide.
Let's just keep going.
All righty then. We don't want to ask any questions, so I want to talk just the last few minutes here about data acquisition and data management. We've talked a lot about the importance of data, that you want a data-driven rather than an effort-driven program. We've talked about FOG triage. That's where you set up flags that allow you to track risky performers or food service establishments that are in a high grease area. And without a good data management system that allows you to track that information or to catalog it, to set those flags up, it's really hard to implement an effective FOG triage program. So it's hard to select your inspections based on the risk that those food service establishments may provide for your sewer district. It's also important from a customer's perspective. In other words, your ratepayers, your food service establishments are your ratepayers also. And if you have a good data management system, it gives them confidence that the city is equitable, and it also allows you to provide technical assistance and advance warnings for facilities that are at risk of noncompliance. So there's a bunch of benefits there. It also provides benefit for the pumping contractors, because what we found here was that when we started our FOG program and began effectively managing our data, that we increased the amount of service that was needed in the restaurant community. So where a pumper might have been providing service to a particular food service establishment once a quarter, because of setting the schedule based on observed bypass of the interceptor, the pumper is now providing service at that facility once every 20 days or once every 30 days. That's a lot of the information that Ed covered demonstrated some of that, some of the work that was done there. So a good data management system allows you to schedule inspections more effectively, and it allows you to reduce inspections on facilities that are performing well. There's a couple things we bumped into when we first started looking at an effective FOG data management system in the Portland metro area. We were trying to find something that would work for all the member cities and the pumpers, and would provide information to the food service establishments. Remember, in a lot of cases, especially in more dense urbanized areas, you may have a chain restaurant that has facilities located in 4 or 5 different jurisdictions. And that facility manager wants to have the same performance standards for every one of his restaurants. He doesn't want to have to meet a different performance standard if he's in Gresham than he does in Hillsborough, for instance. By the same token, the pumpers want to be able to submit reports either on paper or electronically with one system. They would really prefer not to have to bounce around between one system and another depending on what town they're in, especially where the towns kind of bleed together like we have out here in our area. So when the preferred pumper group was starting to look at data management systems, we looked at kind of three options, or we thought we had three options. One was to use the existing data management system that each one of the cities had. And trust me, every city has a different platform that they run their pretreatment data management system on. So that didn't seem like it would work. It was hard to shoehorn FOG data into an industrial pretreatment program data management system. And it wasn't very efficient. Another option that we looked at was the purchase of off-the-shelf packages like FOG program data management systems that you would buy a license for and then install on your server inside your firewall. The problem with that is if you were like Clackamas County, where Ed worked, or myself there in Washington County, where you got 12 member cities and 7 of those cities have their own FOG programs, they didn't have access to the data, and nor could they put data into the system because it was behind our firewall. So it was kind of a non-starter for us. The third option was to look at a web-based system, and one that I'll talk about here. There's two I'm going to talk about that I'm familiar with, and they're both very effective. But one is Swift Comply. It was actually started by the FOG program manager in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. He managed the FOG program for the whole country of Ireland and was basically buried in paper. And so he hired some designers, and they put the Swift Comply FOG data management system together for the Irish Republic, and then it's been exported all over the place. So in our area, Gresham and Bend are both using it, and we have other cities that are looking at implementing it. It's web-based, so a FOG program manager can basically access it from anywhere that he has network access. It's not behind the firewall. It is secure, and the company has multiple redundant systems, and it's backed up regularly. It allows for external access and co-implementer accountability. So it would have allowed Clean Water Services, any of our member cities, to use the system, and all of the pumpers could input data on the system. All the restaurants then could use it also. So you can enter field data. The pumpers can enter it in the field, and it's real-time data. FOG inspectors can enter FOG inspection data in the field with a tablet or a smartphone. It's real-time data. And because it tracked all of our triage flagging mechanisms, or the triggers, it allowed for a very impressive FOG triage program to be implemented, and it really benefited the inspectors and the restaurants. So it was really it's a nice system. I have a friend that has a small. He works in a small community. He knows every one of the food service establishments, and he tracks them on Excel, and that's all he needs. So those are some options. Another option to look at. He knows out of his 40 some restaurants, he knows everyone that's a very high, medium, or low loader. It's in his head. He knows whether they're on a FOG line or not. It's in his head. I really feel sorry for the person that takes over when he retires. But he tracks the restaurant, the pump out information on an Excel spreadsheet. So that's an option. One of the other companies that provides a very good FOG data management system is Linko Systems, Linko FOG. You can look them up, Google Linko, and you'll get right to their website. It looks different than the one I've got on my screen because they've updated a bunch of stuff since I put this slideshow together. But they've been around for a long time, and I think due in some cases to the feedback they've gotten from municipalities that are trying to implement FOG triage plans, they've included a lot of the triage triggers in their newest iteration. And it is web-based, so you can use it. If you have a third party that wants to access it, they're going to have to pay a licensing fee to get into your part of their system. but it's still available online. So it doesn't sit behind your firewall, which is really good. Swift Comply is the same way. And one of the issues, or it's not really an issue, but Swift Comply provides a discount to paid Western States Alliance members. So if you become a member of Western States Alliance and you're located either in regions 8 or 10, Swift Comply will give you a discount when you sign up with them if you're a member of Western States Alliance. Same thing with Gold Street Design with their public notice information. They'll give you a discount also if you're a member of Western States Alliance. So the membership group is trying to build more of those alliances with commercial vendors so that you can get discounts as members. Linko is not quite set up the same way as Swift Comply. Swift Comply is set up with basically 3 separate modules. They're linked by location code for each food service establishment. But the city and the restaurants and the pumpers, the pumper can't see restaurant information, the pumper can't see other pumpers' information. Each one of these entities, the restaurants, the city, and the pumpers get login information so that they can create their data system and manage it, but others can't get into it and look at it. A restaurant can go to the preferred pumper list, choose a pumper, and connect with that pumper and ask for a pump out on a specific date or a date range, and then the pumper can schedule his pump outs in a geographic area so he doesn't have to drive miles and miles between pump outs. He can go in and service 4 or 5 restaurants that may be within a half mile or a mile radius of each other. If the pumper is already setting up his schedule and he can get to the restaurant a little bit earlier or a little later, he'll let the restaurant know, I can't come on the 26th on Monday, but I could come on the 27th, or I could have my guy out there on Saturday the 24th. And then the restaurant determines whether they want to go ahead and set up service with the pumper for that date. As soon as the pumper is done with a service, he logs on to his iPad or his tablet PC or his smartphone and pulls up the pump out for that food service establishment, identifies that it's been completed, and fills in the data that's necessary for that pump out report. He may also take a picture of the interceptor and attach that to the report. And as soon as he submits it, the city has it, and so does the restaurant. So it's a pretty nice little system. FOG inspectors that go out in the field can also log all the FOG inspection data, and at the end of the inspection, they can submit an inspection report directly to the restaurant owner or manager. I'm going to skip the next couple of slides. They're really hard to see. They're basically visual reporting dashboards that can be customized and set up. So if your Public Works manager wants to see how you're doing on the FOG program and he has specific criteria that he or she is tracking, they can set that dashboard up so that it shows that in a visual way, just like with those colored circles and those graphs. This slide shows 3 different screens, and I'm going to dig in here for a minute. The establishment database is set up so that when a FOG inspector logs in the morning, this system is set up to flag food service establishments that are going to be late or are already late with the service pump out. So they're color coded on the left side. So the yellow food service establishments are within so many days of a service, and perhaps they haven't scheduled the service yet, but it gives the inspector the opportunity to let them know, send them an email or a text message and say, hey, you're almost due for service, your service date's coming up. The red dotted food service establishments are already late. And by late, I mean this is set up by the city in the system. So if you want to flag restaurants that are within 5 days of the service as yellow, you can, or 10 days. The red ones can be flagged if they're 5 days or 10 days or 15 days late. But it allows the restaurant or the food FOG inspector to go through and select the restaurants he's going to concentrate his inspections on based on whether they're high loaders on a fog line, all fixtures and drains connected or not, and whether they're late with their pump out, so that he can pick the ones that will be the most risky for the municipality or for the potential for causing a sewer blockage or a sanitary sewer overflow. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you guys pop a question to me. The establishment profile can be set up. The format has basic information in it, and then every city can customize this through a template generator. You can customize the establishment profile information to include items that may be important to you, but other cities may not notice it as important. For instance, you may want to identify if a food service establishment is in a food court, or if they're a mobile unit that's fixed. In other words, they're set up in like a food pod, a parking lot, which has 4 or 5 different mobile units set up in it semi-permanently. So there's ways that you can customize this establishment profile to meet your needs. You get pump out reports. Again, your service area can customize what the pumper has to submit. So in our area, we want to know that the food service establishment was serviced, how much grease and solids were in the unit, and then whether the grease interceptor needs some kind of repair or service. Does it have baffles missing? Is the seal gone from the lid? Are the bolts gone? Is the transfer piping broken? Is the baffle wall leaking? Is there exposed aggregate? Are they pumping rocks out of the unit when they do the service? These are the kind of things that the pumper can complete on the pump out report. And some of those items are specifically needed in the Portland metro area. So we ask all the pumpers to submit that information on all their pump outs. So we can customize these pump out reports to include that information. Same thing with the inspection forms. There's a template or a form generator that Swift Comply created, and it's very, very easy to use. So you can create a question for your inspector with a yes/no answer, or a text answer, or multiple choice. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can put this inspection report form together. And then your inspectors can complete it in the field, and it'll fit on a smartphone, it'll fit on a tablet. So it's if they have web access, it's great because they can fill this form out in the field, submit the data, and it's automatically input into the database. And they can also generate an inspection report for the restaurant and email it to the restaurant right there when they're in the field. The custom forms are easy to build in Swift Comply. The Swift Comply system can be set up to email notices either automatically. In other words, when a restaurant is within 5 days of its service, you can have Swift Comply send an email to the restaurant notifying them that they're within 5 days of the service date, or if they're 5 days late. There's a whole bunch of different options you can set up in the system itself. I'm a little bit more familiar with them than I am with Linko. Ed's more familiar with Linko than I am because he used the Linko system in Clackamas County. Any kind of data management system that allows you to track appropriately the information you need to manage your FOG program is a huge benefit. I can't overemphasize how important good data management systems are. And like I said, I've talked about 2 of them. I don't think you'd be disappointed with either one. One may be a bit easier to use than the other, or vice versa. But you do need to have program elements that are tracked. The establishment, the pump outs, what kind of grease interceptors are in each one of the food service establishments, and then your inspections. These are all items that need to be tracked. I'm going to skip this next slide and go here, a good system, a good data management system allows the city to manage risk better. It also allows the city to operate to reduce the cost of a FOG program where you're focusing on areas that need to be focused on and not trying to inspect everybody in the service area once a year, like the way I started my program at first. One of the things we found is that it really does enhance customer service. It allows you to provide a greater level of service to the food service establishments and the pumping community. And also plumbing contractors and the folks that are coming in with new restaurants, because you have a really good foundation where you can set those folks up and know that it's going to work. And then if you happen to have an energy recovery system in place at your city to take in brown grease for increasing your digester gas production out of your anaerobic digester, it will allow you to maximize or optimize your grease capture for those units. So you get better quality fuel and more of it, less water, higher quality fuel. I think we're done for the day. I think this finishes up our class.
Yeah, we gotta go. We got our next call.
If we're done, then I'm done, Krista.
All right, thanks everyone for attending. I'm sorry we didn't have enough time to go over, all of your questions, but again, use the email that I sent to all of you guys. Clayton would be more than happy to answer the 2 questions that we got. And we really appreciate your participation in today's webinar, and hopefully we'll see you all on future webinars or even potentially at our forum. So thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.